Congratulations, you've finished your first draft of your book. Now what do? Let's sit down and talk about editing your first draft. Welcome to Pen to Paper. I'm Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series. Today we're going to get down into what it's like to edit your first draft. As I said, you've written your book. That's an amazing feat. So you should pat your back. And what do you do next? Well, I'm going to give you some tips to help you go through the first editing process as smoothly as possible. However, don't expect a smooth journey because there's going to be lots of bumps and lots of changes that you're going to have to fly with. You're going to have to move pieces around. If you like puzzles, maybe this is for you. But this is all a part of being a writer. And yes, editing does take another set of skills, which if you're not good at already, you can ameliorate and get better at. But let's talk about before you even get to your first draft. You should set it aside for a good period of time because when we get to editing our first draft, we want to be as objective as we can. Now, obviously, you're not going to be perfectly objective. This is your work. You have personal attachment to it, to your characters, to your plot, and so it is going to always be looked at in a little bit of a non-objective light on your part. But you can do your best to be as objective as possible, and that means setting it aside for a time. I would highly recommend a minimum of 1 month, and you can even go to 3 to 4 months. However time you need to just dissociate yourself from the project, maybe work on some other writing projects, smaller projects that you want to pick up on the side, that would fill in the time until you can get back into your first draft, which is super exciting. This is actually where I am right now on my 5th work, which is called Unborn Melody. And later in the video, I'm actually going to show you some live editing that I'm going to do with it, which is really scary because I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position. You guys are going to see some of my work. And if you've ever done this before, you know that a first draft is usually terrible. If you haven't done this before, you can look forward to that when you're looking at your first draft. It's very messy. You probably did not write a perfect book as maybe you had hoped or maybe you had envisioned. So what is the best way to going about taking what you have, the potential that's there, and really working it to make a work that's readable for your readers? And even before you get to readers, if you're hiring an editor to bring it to your editor, to bring it to your beta readers, you definitely want to put your work in before you send it out to other people for their opinions. So, one tip that I want to give out to you is definitely reading it out loud, or if you feel like reading it out loud would be very tiresome, maybe key sections that, as I said, are key, and you want to make sure that everything flows smoothly, the dialogue, specifically dialogue, you're going to want to read out loud. And then if you come across a problem area that you're not too sure works, then read it out loud and see how does it sound. Does this sound natural? Does it actually flow with what came before? When you edit your work, read it out loud so you kind of see it from a different perspective. Now, one tip that you might have heard from other authors is that you should print out your work. I've never done this because I guess I have a great knack for being able to keep it all up here in kind of going out of the small picture to the bigger picture. But if you feel that you need to print out your work and write in your notes with an actual pen, then do it. I guess I could try it, but it's not something I've done. So I don't feel that I need to give that advice out, but I just thought I'd bring it up because I have heard other authors say that that is very helpful for them. Another tip that you should employ when doing your developmental edit, which this is what your first edit really is. Your developmental edit is basically editing the content. Basically making sure that your whole character arcs, your plot storylines all make sense. You're not going to go into the nitty-gritty details of sentence structure and passive voice versus active voice. That is for later line edits. But right now you're just looking at the overall structure and scheme of your story. So to do a developmental edit well, you're going to want to ask yourself a few questions, and you want to make sure that you keep these questions in mind and your answers to these questions as you are editing. So one question I would definitely ask yourself is, what does my character need or want? What are they trying to accomplish in this story? Why should the reader be rooting for them? So I do ask myself these questions. I don't write them down, but probably that's a good practice to do. I tend to keep a lot of my information up here, and I guess it works for now. But maybe when I'm old and senile, or if I just lose my memory, then I should be writing these things down, and maybe that will even help me more. But definitely ask yourself that question. And then another question you're going to want to ask yourself is, what is coming against my character? What are the stakes of my character not reaching their goal or what they need to accomplish? And if you have more than one character, one main character, you could have a main female character and a main male character. You're going to want to do this for both. Just realizing now, actually, that I definitely have this down packed for my female character. I have a little bit of it down for my male character, but it's definitely not as fleshed out. So maybe that's something I need to work on in this first developmental edit. This is something new I'm doing differently with this book, is I'm having some chapters in her perspective and some chapters in his perspective, and then switching back and forth. And I haven't gotten to the chapters of his perspective yet, so perhaps that's why I haven't felt like I needed to answer that question yet, but it's definitely one I should answer and fully grasp and know when I get to his section of his point of view. And what else do I have to give you guys? Let's just say that once you've done your developmental edit, again, take some time apart from it. I know most people perhaps only do one. I actually do two. I like to go over it again and just make sure that I've caught all my mistakes. Oh, something else. If you are writing historical fiction and you're doing developmental edit, what I've done when I wrote the first draft is, part of writing a first draft is not stopping. Now, I did a lot of historical research before I wrote the first draft. But when you're in the thick of writing your first draft, if you can't find the answer to the question that you need for your research right away, I would just start in my manuscript, and then I would know this is an information that I would need to find later. Well, in my first developmental edit, this is when I take a pause on what I'm doing, what I'm writing, and then go into that piece of information that I need to perhaps further my understanding, my grasp of how the story is going to come together. Because in historical fiction, those historical information points can definitely affect the story and your character arcs and your plot storyline. Those are my tips for editing a first draft. And once you've written done your developmental edits, then that would be the time, if you are going with an editor, to send it to your editor, or if you just decide to go with beta readers, to send it to your beta readers. And then again, as I said, I do two. So once my readers have read after revising it the first time, then they send me their comments and their suggestions, and then I can really add those into a second developmental edit if I need to. And that's why I do a second one. So you decide what you want to do. But that is how I feel best helps me in my editing process. And then from there I go into line edits and more finicky elements of editing. I hope that these tips have been helpful to you, but I'm not leaving you just yet. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share some live editing with you in just a minute, so stay tuned. All right, welcome to this very in-depth view of first draft editing. I'm going to be editing my first draft here for about 10 minutes, so you kind of get to see the whole ins and outs of the process. This is a good part, I think, for you to see. It's not giving away too much, but just enough that hopefully this is of help to you. Okay, so I actually just did a little bit of research before I jumped into this, because I had this dollar amount. Where is it? Oh, I had a dollar amount right here, and I wasn't too sure what it was. So I had mentioned that if I had an amount or in historical information missing, that during my developmental edit, that's where I actually go in and make sure I have the proper information. But I didn't want to do that during this because I didn't want to take away from what you could be seeing. During this live edit, I'm just going to act normally and pretend you're all not here listening. But I think that will help you see what the process is for me usually. Actually, one thing that I forgot to mention is when you do your developmental edits, sometimes it's really difficult to not get into line editing. So editing small little details, I really try to fight doing that while I'm doing my big picture edits. But if you do it, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. All right. What I've done here is this whole section where it is italicized is a little flashback to the past to help you understand what's happening in the present. So I'm just working on that now. And if you see that all this writing is a disaster, well, let that be an encouragement to you that first drafts are not as perfect as we think them to be. They're full of messes, and this is where we get into the fixing. Alright, so this was the dollar amount that I was talking about. I couldn't remember how much typists would make in Edmonton during World War II. It's 70, and in the north it was 120, so quite a big jump in salary there. I've got to keep whatever is left over for oops. There. See, this whole sentence here doesn't quite make sense. Here, this is a little too abrupt, so I'm going to use a dash, but I'm still not too sure about this. Oh, one thing I should mention is if you do catch anything during these live editing of 10 minutes that you see doesn't quite make sense, or you think I could work on just from this little snapshot, feel free to write that down in the comments below, and I'll definitely get on that. Oh, I have not been timing this. Okay, let me do that right now. I'm guessing this has been about 2 minutes, 8 more minutes. See there, I don't know who was slamming the wall. One behind on the rent by a few months. Oh, actually, see, this was not clear. I thought it was her brother talking. It's actually her. So we'll put that there. It wasn't too long after that she passed by a recruitment office. Alright, so this is where my italicized part ends. The past flashback ends, and now I'm back in the present to... Now I'm just trying to see here. Okay, I see the issue here. Why? Okay, no, wait, maybe. Oh yes, okay, so she mentioned she doesn't come from money, and this is why I put in that little flashback explaining the money issue. And she's preparing for her wedding day, and now we're back at the wedding. Okay. Okay, I gotta read this out loud because this is... Instead of walking to the office through the main thoroughfare between camp buildings, which the partygoers yeah. She skirted behind them, careful to stay within the shadows. The bride feared to be seen. When she walked in and saw Seth, Peter, Julia. That's another thing. I changed this person's name halfway through, so I've been fixing that. And the chaplain, all of them with expectant looks of a bride rejoicing in her day. All of them. Okay, that doesn't make sense. He would not be expecting that. Here. Okay, gotta fix the sentence. Not written well. This is what I'm talking about, the mess. Actually, you know what? I think this is taking away from the sentence. I'm going to get rid of it. I feel like it's dragging it down. I think it could be worded much better. So we're going to get rid of it for now. This is part of first draft editing, is really making sure your writing is tight and there's not extra words there to not give any meaning to what you have. Oh my goodness. That is 8 minutes already? Okay, it seems way too short. How about I'm gonna finish right here. Okay. Okay. When she walked in and saw Seth, Peter, Julia, and the chaplain, the pit of her stomach throbbed, and the source of her air shriveled. Yeah, see, this is extra that doesn't add. I love cutting things out during the editing process. It just makes it cleaner. Okay, this should be a completely different. That should go with that. I don't know if this is the right way to say it here. The vows which unwillingly, let's go with that one, unwillingly bound her to a sacred bond. She struggled to voice a yes, because what if God found out and made her pay for her sacrilege? Oh, but he did know her yes. Alright, there we go. I edited a full page for you, and that was fun. Scary but fun. So enjoy this tutorial, and let me know down in the comments what was most helpful to you, what tips, and as I said, if you see anything that you felt didn't work or that needs help, let me know, and that would be very helpful, and I hope that this was helpful to you. Have an awesome week.